Hello again, Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. We have with us another candidate file. John Hollinrake is running for Iowa Senate District 21. We're glad to have him here. Let's get that ticker going across the bottom of the screen for those of you watching. For those of you listening, I'd like for you to consider going to Hollinrake for Iowa in your internet browser and arrive there. So we'll jump right into the questions that we've been offering everybody, and then we'd like for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right, here we go. So with our litmus test, everybody's seen that blog. We'll link to it so that you can see that. The first question that we've got here's the context. History has shown that no gun zone policies do not protect those gathered at school and other designated locations. In fact, some of the worst mass murderers have deliberately targeted these sites because they expected little or no armed resistance. Federal law and the law of some states permit qualified individuals with a valid carry permit to possess firearms in schools and on school property. The question is this: will you support changing the Iowa code to recognize an Iowa permit to carry as sufficient for carry in any school?
Yeah. Well, I think your question puts it really well, which is that, law-abiding gun owners are not breaking the law and they're not harming others. And having these zones where people are not allowed to use the permit that Iowa law allows them to have is creating these, soft areas, soft targets where people that have bad intent know they can do harm and they won't see the resistance that they would see in other areas where these zones don't exist. So I think that's a very common sense approach to make sure that, everyone is safe and that your right to bear arms is protected. And when you think about how people go about their day, coming and going from picking their kid up for school or dropping them off, most folks aren't going home every time between that, right? You're dropping them off on your way to work, you're picking them up on their way to work or between athletics or things like that. So when we just think about common sense about how people live their lives, that's what we should be focused on.
Fantastic. All right, we'll move forward to question number 2. When employers ban firearms or ammunition in private vehicles on company property, employees must choose between violating the company policy or forfeiting their ability to lawfully defend themselves during their commute and daily activities. The Iowa Firearms Coalition believes that the appropriate balance between employer property rights and individual rights, including privacy and self-defense, lies at the locked door of a private vehicle. The laws of at least 26 states recognize and uphold this balance. Your question is this, John: will you support legislation to protect Iowans from the de facto ban on private and public employer parking lots?
I would, and I will, when I'm serving in the Iowa Senate, and I think that you're exactly right. This is about Iowans' rights to bear arms. And at the same time, I understand that there's, folks from the business point of view on this that are concerned about liability aspects. And I think that is important to recognize too. And in Iowa, in the legislature, we have the ability to do both. We have the ability to ensure that the rights of the Second Amendment rights of Iowans are not infringed, while also providing that important liability protection for employers. I'm very sympathetic to that concern on their part. In Iowa, over the majority of our businesses are small businesses, and they employ over half the Iowans in this state. So when you think about where people are going to work, at a small business, that for those people that own those businesses, this is their entire livelihood. This is usually their retirement too. I can understand why they they want to make sure from a liability standpoint they are protected as that business owner, even if they themselves support the Second Amendment. So I think that a law in place in Iowa to allow Iowans to keep exercising their Second Amendment rights and give that liability certainty that we need for business owners is something that the legislature can absolutely do.
Fantastic. We'll move forward to number 3. Since 1934, federal law has strictly regulated, but not prohibited, the private ownership of machine gun suppressors, short barrel rifles, shotguns, and other items regulated under the National Firearms Act. Iowa law classifies many of these items as offensive weapons in Iowa Code Section 724.1. Iowa has allowed private ownership of suppressors, SBRs, SBS, and more for nearly a decade without issue. Nationwide, crimes committed with NFA weapons are virtually non-existent. Iowa is one of only 14 states that bans items like machine guns, which are completely legal on a federal level. The Supreme Court's Bruin decision is being cited to overturn bans and challenge the remaining injustices scattered across Iowa. Your question is this: will you support removing 724.1 and related statutes from Iowa Code?
Yeah. I think, Michael, anytime that Iowa law is somehow more strict on restricting gun freedom, that's something we need to take a look at. We passed a constitutional amendment in the state that had a large majority of Iowans that said, gun rights are important to them, and they want to make sure that they are protected in our Constitution. So the fact that we have outdated code that is more strict than what federal law allows for is certainly an area we need to look at, and I'm support taking a look at that.
All right, thank you. Now for our final question. The Iowa Firearms Coalition supports the creation of a specially Gadsden flag license plate in Iowa to recognize and celebrate Second Amendment rights while affirming opposition to government overreach. The plate would serve as a voluntary funding source for firearm safety and educational programs through an additional registration fee. Although the proposal passed the Iowa House with bipartisan support, in 24 and 25, it failed to advance in the Senate. In 2026, Senate leadership, having given personal assurance we're going to get it done, offered Iowans a bait and switch bill funding bureaucracies like the NRC, along with Homeland Security and Emergency Management. That was Senate File 2409. IFC is encouraging Iowans to support the measure, which we believe reflects the will of the people, particularly following the overwhelming adoption of Iowa's Freedom Amendment. Featuring the historic Don't Tread on Me motto, the Gadsden flag has long symbolized individual liberty and resistance to unnecessary government intrusion, making it a fitting choice for the specially licensed plate. Your question is this: will you support the Gadsden plate legislation that directs voluntary funding for 2A education, safety, and training?
Yes, I would. This is, America's 250th birthday this year, and just think how incredible it'd be to have that freedom this year, to have that on our license plate, really going back to the roots of our founding fathers, people that fought for the freedom and independence we have in this country. And it's exactly what you said in your question, which is this is people's choice, right? You're choosing to have this license plate. So yes, I would support that legislation.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you answering those questions. What we do at this point is we move over to showing your website. For those of you out there, you can see it. For those of you listening, again, I'd like for you to navigate to Hollinrake for Iowa and put that in your internet browser and you'll get there. And just for your edification, in case you're not seeing it, Hollinrake is just how it sounds. HOLLINRAKE. That's John Hollinrake in Iowa Senate District 21. So you've got your, I've got your website up here. I'll be going through it as you walk us through it. Tell us what you'd like for us to know about the Second Amendment, your stance on that, or anything else about your campaign or you that we need to know. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I'm a first-time candidate for office. I think it's important that people get to know me and who I am. And first off, I'm running for Iowa Senate District 21, which represents almost all of Ankeny. And I'm a native Iowan, grew up here, and Ankeny's my hometown. And if you would have asked me if I was going to be doing this a year ago, this was not on my radar at all. Running for office was not in the plan that I had ever envisioned for myself. And currently, you'll see on my website if you go to my bio, but I work for Senator Joni Ernst right now, and I've really enjoyed serving Iowans in that capacity. But on a personal level, I'm a bit of a private person. So, stepping forward into the spotlight, so to speak, was really never something I envisioned for myself. But the reality is there's a lot on the line this year in Iowa in our elections. And there are issues that I care about, which is making sure that Iowans actually see the property tax relief they were promised. So I want to make sure they see that in 2027, and making sure that we keep having, good schools in Ankeny and our good job training programs at DMAC are all things I got to take advantage of when I was a kid growing up here. And I think those are really important for the future. And really went back to just talking with my friends and family about this seat and what was going to happen since our current senator isn't running again. And finally decided, you know what, you can either roll up your sleeves and get in there and try and do something good, or you just, you sit back and complain. And I've never been a complainer. I grew up in a household with two military parents, and complaining wasn't going to get you very far. The answer was going to be, what are you going to do about it? So this has really been great to be able to run and represent my hometown. It's been a lot of good conversations with folks. So I've been out door knocking, for months now, and people are really excited to have someone that's, from Ankeny running to represent them. And I want to make sure that they have a strong voice in the Senate representing them. Folks can do their research on this race. And what I will tell you is that, I am someone that is going there to work hard for you every day and actually get things done for Ankeny. I'm not going there to just make political statements and try and, act like I'm doing something when I'm not. So I want to make sure that Ankeny actually has a strong voice representing them in the Senate. And that's me.
That's fantastic. Again, everybody that's looking at this, you can see it is pretty straightforward. But if you navigate to Hollinrake for Iowa by typing that on your internet browser, you're going to make it there. The website's no nonsense. Tells you a little bit about John, what's going on, some ideas about his issues, and then places for you to volunteer and plug in. There's a lot of people out there that could and should help with folks' campaign. And I don't know why they don't have the motivation, or they're just not sure how to do it. People are making that very easy these days. John's got his site set up so they can do that. You're welcome to donate. He's got links to social media, so it's all right there. Is there anything else we need to know about John Hollinrake and Iowa Senate District 21 before we let you go, sir?
Yeah, I would say this is going to be a very competitive election. So Senate District 21 is definitely to keep on your radar. And if there's anything you can do to help out, like Mike said, would appreciate all the support. So thanks so much for having me on.
Fair enough. We appreciate it, sir. We wish you the very best. If there's anything else you need, give us a holler and we'll get you back on so you can get everybody up to speed.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.